We now have Ray and Gary. And these are the two you have to watch carefully. 24 winners and start the awards.
With any luck, we'll give you back a couple of minutes on it. The International Federation for Systems Research is an organization of now about 45 systems organizations around the world, one of which is the ISSS. It is actually younger than the ISSS, formed in 1981. Executive board, one of us needs to update our photo. I want to just say a quick hello from Mary Edson, who is the current president of the IFSR, who is not here because she's attending the System Dynamics Society meeting in Boston, trying again to do some more cross-collaboration with organizations that we have not worked so closely with historically. The IFSR Conversation is an event that many of you are familiar with. We are now in the midst of preparing for the 2018 Conversation. Marty Jacobs will be helping spearhead that, and so if you're interested in being a part of that, either in bringing a team or in participating in a team that is yet to be formed, please contact Marty, and we'll be working on that through probably getting the teams formed and finalized by early fall. What I'd like to do for this morning is bring forward a couple of themes that you heard earlier on. One is this concept of doing, because it is the thing that we've talked a lot more about than actually been able to achieve in most of our systems organizations. We do a lot of talking about, thinking about things, including development of theories. But in terms of true implementation, it's been a lot more challenging. It's just not the orientation that we tend to come from in our own backgrounds, especially from academia. The concept that I thought was particularly helpful was this of impact investing. So if we were to think about how we as systems societies begin to do more investment in our futures and what we can bring to societies at large, where do we put our time and effort? So here's two particular areas to think about. Bud Lawson did a really nice job of giving a preface to this whole thing in the books that he has published through the series done with the Greater Likely Center. There's a lot of good reasons for publishing through places like college publications, right? If you've done writing, published books, you understand very well how that game gets played. You know that as an author of a chapter or even an entire book for a major publisher, you're not going to make a lot of money unless you happen to be exceptionally good and the book happens to go really big. The publishers make most of the money. But let me give you the other side of the equation, because it's not an either or. We, about 2 years ago, before George Clear passed away, he had sent an email note saying, I've got the IFSR book series, which has been long-standing. The original publisher had at that point been bought by Springer. Springer was reinstituting it. And so it took us really the better part of a year of negotiating both internally with Springer and within the IFSR to get the series restarted, if you will. George Mobus, who has published some of his own work through Springer, but he's actually a retired professor in the computer science area from University of Washington, has agreed to take on the role of editor-in-chief, and he is, at this moment, starting the next volume to come from it. What we've discovered through a number of different processes, working with Springer in New York in mathematics, which is where the IFSR series is, my working with Jen Kojima and others in Tokyo through the Translational System Science series, which is another Springer edition. There's a lot of systems books that have been published in at least 4, and I know your area isn't covered here, so I know there's at least 5 series within Springer that include volumes about systems. But they aren't just called systems. And there's no real rationality that I can find about what the titles and the works are within any given series. So we're working with various editors across the Springer series to begin to tag the books that are systems related so that when people search, hopefully, they can begin to find those. Now, the advantage of a publisher like Springer is not, again, for the individual author, but in terms of the potential influence that the books published in Springer can take to getting our books into university libraries around the world is significantly different. And that has some potential, and that's worth considering. So, here are the reconstituting, if you will, of the IFSR book series. The Translational System Science series is done through Tokyo. The Understanding Complex Systems is another one. Much larger number of books. That's where George Mogis publishes individual ones. Contemporary Systems Thinking is actually Bob Flood's series. You know, I don't know the total number of individual books that are published under each of those. And again, yours is which series, Ray? Computing and Information and something, on the subcategory of the computing area. So again, they're scattered all over the place. We need to begin to bring these together. The Bertalanffy book series. The Bertalanffy Center, as I understand it, has also gotten the copyright for Charles Francois' encyclopedia. So that can now be updated. Journals is another topic, and I haven't begun to scratch the surface of the number of systems journals that are out there that should not be competing with each other. I think that's the major point here. There is an archives, they've just gotten funding through, who's even doing the funding? Anyway, University of Illinois is helping basically bring together and bring back up to date the archives from a lot of the original cybernetics works. They will become again available. So here's a proposal. You are familiar, obviously, with the journals.ISSS.org site, right? That's where you've submitted your abstracts. That's an open source journal structure, essentially. It would be possible, I think, to provide a central repository for people who wanted to publish works in systems. Those could be journal articles, those could be book chapters, they could potentially be abstracts or proposals for whole books. If the editors-in-chief, primarily, of book series and of journals decided to collaborate, I think it would be not hard to set up a central site where they would become the people who would first see those abstracts. The point is that I think it would be much more helpful to direct work to appropriate venues rather than to have people submitting to a place where they simply get rejected or not. That just requires the editors involved to decide to cooperate. The IFSR has no need to own that process, but I think we can help facilitate it. If you are an editor or working with a journal or book series and you'd like to participate, let us know. Competencies is the second area of doing that we have been working on facilitating. I'm going to turn this over to Ray to describe where that's been going.
Thanks, Gary. Well, some of you came to a conversation which was very rich during the week about Competencies professionalization of systems thinking in practice, some of the issues that the students raised in their sessions today. And we're pleased to report that Jason Hugh will be helping to facilitate that ongoing conversation about professionalization and where it goes, and I think it's a facilitating role that IFSR can play. Work out how to do this. Yesterday I made the point in the panel session that to bring together what we all aspire to do, we have to think about the governance system in which we sit this, and the institutional arrangements in which those sit. A reason I'm participating in IFSR is that I'm interested in institutional innovation and how we break out of the complexity or the constraints of the complexity of all of the different systems organisations that represent different groups around the world. And this was an attempt when I was president of ISSS a couple of years ago to pull together in a systems map the different organisations, bodies that are like ISSS or like ASC or like the Systems Dynamics Society, etc. And so we have a great plethora of organisations, but we have no limited solidarity. Many of these arose at a time when individual egos dominated over societal need. And so, at this particular historical moment, what we need is to emphasise what we all have in common, rather than, at least institutionally and organisationally, what is different from us, whilst holding those differences in a creative tension. And so I think institutional reform and organisation or reform is a role that IFSR can facilitate, and ultimately it would be nice to be able to support the program that Peter has just talked about in terms of building and investing in systems literacy and systems thinking and practice capabilities. But more than that, we need to be at the table whenever policies are decided, whenever research funding or research grants are being framed. At the moment, we are not at the main tables around these issues, and so we need to build and invest in our institutional and organisational capital such that we can support people being in those conversations and at those tables. I think that was probably all I was going to say, Gary. Sorry, I haven't quite finished, so you can applaud again. And Aki will be really distressed. IFSR at the moment comprises a set of memberships of member organisations like ISSS. One of the discussions we're having, and if we have enough capacity and capability ourselves in where we might like to take the conversation, is to try and increase the number of types of organisations in which a member of IFSR, particularly educational providers, training providers, and to some extent even consultancies who advocate and pursue a systems type of practice. So there's an opportunity to build a greater solidarity by having more types of members in this umbrella organisation. And I just want to hand over to Gerhard, who's going to make a couple of awards.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gerhard Grossman. I'm the long-term Secretary General of the IFSR, of which you have heard quite a bit. And we have always, it's a team of 4 or 5 people around this association, and we have the habit to, we want sometimes to thank them for what they did and still doing for this international federation. So I have this time the pleasure to call up Gary Metcalf, because he was a very long-standing member of the executive committee for 17 years in total. I counted that, and 7 of them even at the helm as a president. So I wanted to thank you in the name of the IFSR, our members.
Very much appreciate this. I don't know if this means that I'm being retired, which would probably be appropriate at this point, but let me just say that we will be having the next nominations for the executive committee, and the election will be in conjunction with the board meeting in the spring. It's a very serious issue about who you would like to ask the people you want involved in the doing. So please consider getting involved, either through nominating someone or yourself becoming a part of this organization or one of the others. Thank you.
A second person saved, worked and helped us in the executive committee for 4 years as a vice president, and I call then the work, the cooperation, and wish him now good luck with the new society he's really heading. Stefan.